Hey guys, on this episode we have Eric Danziger, the CEO of Invisible AI. Eric discusses Invisible AI's ability to measure cycle times and break down weaknesses in production. We also discuss some real-life examples on how they were able to improve processes on the manufacturing floor. Without further ado, enjoy the show.
This podcast is sponsored by Promus Incorporated, the leading provider of fully electric servo presses for manufacturing. Promus provides global support for pressing and motion control applications in multiple industries. With precise positioning and in-process force monitoring, your company will begin to see ROI on day one. Call 810-229-9334 or email sales@promusinc.com to speak with an expert engineer about your application today.
Hey guys, welcome to Manufacturing Unscripted. I'm your host, Matt Rawl.
And I'm Lauren.
Today we are joined with Eric Danziger from Invisible AI. Hey Eric, how you doing?
Doing great, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm a little excited to talk about what you have to offer today because it's a little bit different than in terms of technology I've seen before. But as a first-time guest, I always love to kind of listen to your story and your background and your journey through manufacturing. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a quick bit about that.
Absolutely. I took kind of a different path, I guess, to working in technology. I was in the Army for almost a decade before going to graduate school. Wound up going to graduate school in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon to study robotics. And robotics and AI, some of the most impactful ways that we can apply this technology in the real world has always been in industry, right? This is, some of the first real applications of robotics, some of the first real applications of computer vision, going back decades and decades and decades. So it's always been kind of a draw. And I've kind of looked at tons and tons of facilities. It's something that I've always been just really interested in manufacturing. In Pittsburgh, in Northern California, kind of what is the current state of just manufacturing in the United States in general. It's been I think something that's just it's fascinating to see so many different facilities and just how complicated it is to make anything. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that we kind of take for granted a lot of times. Just even something as simple as food and beverage, right? It's this massive application. So I studied robotics. After that, though, there's this whole period almost 10 years ago where everybody was really, really excited about self-driving, right? So this is something that's kind of come and gone, and it's maybe coming back. We're kind of, in the different parts of the Gartner hype cycle the whole time. So I took a brief stint working at a company called Luminar. They develop LiDAR for self-driving vehicles. And built a software team for them to tackle the self-driving side of the house. So they were a LiDAR company. We kind of built them into a full stack solution. And then with my co-founder, Pratik, left that company to start Invisible AI.
All right. First off, thank you for your service. I did not come across that on your background, but yeah, thank you so much. So I thought it was interesting when kind of doing a little research that you did work in kind of the autonomous vehicle sector. And one thing that I think I kind of read about you is you kind of made the jump because you were kind of, I don't want to say impatient, but there was technology that you noticed that could be used right now. It was more of I don't want to wait for the car to come out for people to be able to use this technology when they can be benefiting from it now. Go ahead.
Sorry. I think that's it, right? I think that, this is something that we've just seen in self-driving. We left something like 5 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And we're just getting to the point now where companies like Cruise and Waymo can start to operate during the day in one city. Yeah. And the rate of progress there has been incredibly slow. They've spent billions upon billions of dollars to kind of develop the technology to where they're at. And it's clear, it feels like it's starting to work significantly better, but it still has a long way to go. Yeah. Right. And the reality is, that's just not a recipe for impact. That's not how you're going to, change how the world works. Right. So At the same time, the underlying technology, right, computer vision, those things, those have made humongous strides, right? And obviously now, right, in the last year and a half, where we started talking about AI a heck of a lot more. But even before that, right, even 5 years ago, it was clear how much of an impact this stuff was going to have, and how well it worked for what it was, right?
Yep.
And I think that's to me the thing. That was the thing that was really exciting, is that, you know, now we have this new technology. How are we going to apply this? And how do we get it out into the real world? That was it, right? Is, you know, I don't want to wait 20, 30 years for this thing to finally germinate and have an impact.
And I think that's a very important like trait or characteristic of yours, to be able to like identify like, hey, like this is going to make cars great, but this can make manufacturing great now. And I think that's something special about, you know, what you and your co-founder kind of saw. And I guess let's talk more about what you guys did with that, and you created Invisible AI. So if you could share a little bit about what you guys are doing at your company.
Absolutely. So I think, you know, the crux of it was that we kind of identified that this technology was ready to make an impact, right? So what are we going to do with this? And I think computer vision is a really challenging market, right? I think that the defect monitoring is one of the oldest, you know, methods in computer vision. It's still a huge market, and a lot of companies kind of wind up trying to put a new spin on that existing kind of category, right? But we wanted this to be something that is more impactful, right? So just to kind of talk about the technology a little bit, right? One of the core challenges in computer vision, and we see this a little bit with some of the other methods, but they you know, are starting with this really broad base of just all text on the internet, right? So that's very helpful. But in computer vision, right, it tends to be very specific to the application that you're solving, and so you'll see, you know, companies that are built around something like defect monitoring, right? Every defect they're looking for is different, right? Yeah. Every product they're looking for a defect on is different. And what that means is that that's a huge engineering challenge every single time you deploy a piece of technology to make it work well, right? And that's the problem they wind up solving. And it, you know, it's really hard to do incredibly well. It's hard to scale that up. What we wanted was something that was not, you know, a consulting or research project every time we deployed. We wanted something that was more like a software product. Right. So Microsoft doesn't customize Word for you, right? You get to open it up and you type whatever notes you want, and that's it. And so, you know, that kind of journey was a big part of our kind of initial period in this company, was trying to understand, how does that work, right? And so this is where, coming back to, you know, some of the biggest problems that we have in businesses and physical businesses, understanding their space, understanding, you know, how work is being done. And the reality is, right, as much as automation has made progress, we're still doing most of this work by hand, right? This is still mostly a manual job. And so how do we kind of understand the movement of material, of people? How do we understand how work is being done? How do we make it more efficient, more safe, and improve quality? But not by looking for defects, right? But by understanding the process, understanding how this is actually happening. And that, to us, was, I think, a huge opportunity. So, you know, we wound up being very lucky, working with some of the biggest manufacturing companies in the world, automotive OEMs. These are people who, you know, literally get production systems named after them, right? Everyone wants to do their process, right? Wants to run their operations the way these guys do. And it's, you know, I think a really kind of unique challenge. So we found that basically by architecting this in a specific way, right? By making sure that all the processing was happening at the edge, that everything was being done locally, that we were focusing on human process and how work is done, as opposed to specific elements of a product, that we could scale this up to hundreds and thousands of cameras in a single facility, right? That we could create this whole map of how work is done, and that is what then lets us kind of help them understand this missing 20%, right? There's this amount of productivity that no one can kind of get beyond, because it's just too hard to actually see. And this is something that I think we've seen in all these facilities. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's, you know, this is a massive opportunity. This is something where, you know, in these companies, they have spent so much time refining how they do process improvement, how they run their operations, and being able to finally get that last bit of productivity improvement, it's going to make a huge difference in the industry.
And I think you mentioned the automotive industry, and I think that industry just happens to be kind of the industry, the top industry in terms of when you talk about manufacturing and just productivity, right? Because milliseconds to them is millions and millions of dollars. And so I don't think it's hard to sell what you're offering, opportunity, right, to kind of save even, and I think people outside of manufacturing don't quite grasp it when you say, hey, I can save you, 0.2 seconds per part. And people like, that's not very much. But when you think of the millions and millions of parts that one person's producing, it turns into millions and millions of dollars. And so that's something that I deal with. I work within the manufacturing industry, and automotive is heavy for us. And it's always, we want to shave off 0.01 second. And like, again, in your head, you're processing, you're like, that's okay. Just, move faster. I don't know, and so, but yeah, it's hard because there's a lot of things that I think what you guys are offering shows them what like the naked eye doesn't see, and
absolutely,
and I think that's cool. And it kind of breaks into some of the questions I had about the technology. And it was something that I read, and that's, just being able to put the sensors, I guess I don't know how it works, but are you physically putting the sensors on an operator and like just tracking them, or how does that work?
Yeah. Many different attempts have been kind of made to understand this problem. Right. And I think that for us, we like to think of it as really understanding the workspace. Right. So, we developed these AI devices. We're kind of including stereo cameras, an AI processor, a ton of storage, all of that on a single device. And those devices go throughout an entire facility. And really what that allows us to do is build up this 3D understanding of a facility, right? And especially in automotive, you can imagine, right, the moving assembly line, which is the core of their business. This is where all the value gets added. Being able to understand that work as it moves, right? As someone is working on a vehicle as it goes down the line. And that's something that requires kind of this spatial understanding, right? We can't just be looking at a work cell. We can't just look at, this one area in the factory floor. We need to understand the whole line, right? Because it all is connected. It all kind of impacts itself.
And some lines are, a mile long. So there's no way that you can, if you're looking on one end, there's no way you can grasp the impact that it has all the way at the other end.
Absolutely. So that's, kind of this holistic awareness, right? How do we show them their whole facility? How do we help them understand how all of these pieces work together, where they're falling behind, where, there is an improvement in process that's necessary. And I think it's, it's really, really impactful because again, there's a lot of these things where you just can't see it. You have to be able to simultaneously watch the interaction of all of these stations all day. And that's just not possible, right? If we put 1,000 of our devices into a facility, that's 16,000 hours of video a day that we're going to generate, right? No human can watch that. That's not possible.
Yeah.
So you need something to help you, right? Focus and say like, okay, this is what you need to be doing, right? This is the area that has the biggest problem. This is where people are struggling the most, right? This is where there's, unsafe ergonomics and it's causing an issue, right? This is where, we're seeing huge amounts of frustration with equipment, right? Because it's not operating properly. It's slowing the whole process down. So that's kind of the underlying idea, right? Is that we can give you now this full visibility of your facility. And it's something I think, in a lot of ways, it's the culmination of this dream of the digital factory, of Industry 4.0, of all of these things, right? We've created so much information, but it's not connected necessarily to anything, right? And that's a consistent problem that we see is a lot of these guys have tons of data. They have a PLC system that's just spitting out what's happening on a regular basis. They have MES systems, they have ERP systems, they have everything, right? but it doesn't tell them what's actually happening. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, you're going to get this nice report and it's going to say you missed your production targets. And it's like, well, thanks.
Yeah.
I know, you know,
Yep.
I got it. But why, right? Why
Right.
did they miss, right? What happened?
Yep.
And it's not always the same answer, right? Sometimes the problem changes day by day. You get a bad batch of parts from a supplier. You get,
Yep.
a machine, gets gummed up and then it gets fixed, right? There's so many different things. A new person starts and they're just not doing the process properly. They haven't
Yep.
been trained, right? So there's just tons and tons of stuff that happens every day. And how do you, again, see where the biggest impact is on your line and go and fix that specifically?
Out of curiosity, how long does it take to set up somebody's system? So you're talking about these cameras. How long does it take you guys to get all that set up?
Yeah, this is an area that again is very important to us, right? Because this is part of this concept of us being more of a software solution than a computer vision solution, right? We want this to just go in and get set up. So what we've worked on is basically the ability to work with their existing digital systems, right? To intake some of their existing data. We can visualize that and kind of lay that on top of our video, and then they will configure their process with our systems, right? And so what that means is like a team leader, somebody who's, first line supervisor in the plant can go through and we have a very simple workflow and they can kind of, say, here's the workspace, here's the work piece that we're working on, here's our pick area. And that's all that we really need to get started analyzing these stations, right? And so the absolute minimum amount of effort, right? Give us one example. We're trying to make this incredibly simple to set up.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that it scales, right? So you have to imagine, again, setting up 1,000 of these things, right? A small project for us is 50, right? And so like that's not something that, if that took months and months each camera, it would never be done.
I guess
that's interesting.
So how quickly can you like produce results for them? So you're set up.
That was my next question.
And like how quickly, can you say I can offer improvements within, a week?
So that's, what we can do is basically as soon as we've got that information, as soon as we've gotten configured and these cameras are set up, sometimes it'll take a week, but a lot of that honestly is just scheduling, right? It's just making sure that we're, we have to come on site. We'll train you how to use it. Those once all of that is done, the system is live. And that's the thing about this is everything is on-prem, right? So everything is in our devices. Each of our devices runs its own AI program. So nothing's going to the cloud. We're not configuring anything like that. This is all something that happens locally and it happens in real time every shift, right? So it will start creating data as soon as you've configured. That's it, right?
Nice.
The thing that, that you're going to want is then, can I compare different shifts? Can I compare this week and last week, right?
Yeah,
all of those things will they'll just take time, right? To build that baseline, but that's more honestly just for them to understand kind of the improvements. The way that we measure kind of labor efficiency, right? That's something that you can do immediately, right? There's this, this idea of kind of the overall equipment effectiveness, right? Or this idea that you're basically going to multiply all these numbers together. But the challenge is that, when you're kind of creating a process, really successful process creation in manual assembly is about maximizing work time. That's it, right? Because the time that you're working on that product, you're adding value. That is the core of manufacturing, right? Is something raw materials come in, you add value and add value and add value, and then it goes out and you sell it. That's it, right? And so we can calculate that for you, right? We can help you understand your true cost of labor. We can help you understand what is the kind of low and high efficiency workstation from nothing, because you're telling me that you have a 60-second cycle time, but the actual time on product is about 5 seconds. Well, that's not very efficient, right? And what's going on? They have to go walk and get a part, right? Or they're waiting for the station before them, or something's happening, right? That's causing that drop in efficiency, and that's something that you can see immediately. But you have to be able to see the work being done to get that information, right? You can't just pull that off of a machine. The machine will just tell you the total cycle time.
Yep. So I have two questions. One, we'll start with this one. I guess what is, from where you have implemented invisible AI, what type of like metrics or results are you able to share in terms of like, what are some of the maybe the higher results that you've seen? Like we were able to, like you just mentioned,
Yeah, like KPIs.
change
like,
a 60-second cycle time to 5 seconds once we told them, hey, you just got to have the part ready for him when he's ready to go. Is there any big ones that stand out to you that you're like, yeah, this just changed their whole life?
So I think there's two kind of big ones that I'll talk about. I think, one of them, is it's smaller numbers, but it's more impressive in my mind just because this was at an automotive OEM, right? So these are guys that, like you're mentioning, right? You save a second, that's a huge amount.
Yep.
So we actually took a line that they, basically they knew something was going on. They didn't have time to go in and analyze it, right? This wasn't a priority. They were just, everyone has too much to do, right? Everyone's running around. And we helped them basically just put, I think, 5% more throughput on this line, which is again, those are really, really big numbers. And 20% headcount reallocation, right? So this is a plant that's about to hire, several hundred people.
Yep.
So being able to take a couple people off of this line and reallocate them to the stations that are just standing up now is a really, really big deal, right? This is one of the biggest challenges you have in manufacturing is hiring and retaining. And so being able to take people that you already have trained, that already know your system, that are already, bought in and excited to be there, that's a huge deal. So that was in a bigger facility. So 20%, that's a,
yeah, I would say just to build on what you said, that 5%. I mean, when we talk about automotive, again, I don't know if we're tooting the automotive hat too much, but these are the experts in manufacturing, right? So to take something that they've created and say put 5% more output in it, that's really impressive, considering that these are the people that everyone looks up to when they think about how should I manufacture something.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like the ROI of it all too, because like you said, moving people around versus hiring new people, and that training is essential, and that could take months to train new people, and that's just a bunch of time that's being wasted.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the hardest problems they have, and I think it's interesting. We look at a lot of different sectors of manufacturing, and it's there are things that you could argue are more complicated, right? In aerospace and this stuff, there are things you could argue are higher volume, but there's nothing that's that mix of really, really complicated, valuable product and high volume like automotive. Like it is a completely different world. And that's, there's a reason if, there's some great stories from World War II about the automakers kind of converting to build tanks, airplanes, howitzers, right?
Yep.
That's kind of, that's the thing that I think gets lost a lot of times in kind of thinking about how the world works, right? One of my favorite sayings is from, I don't know, I think he's a British general like 200 years ago, right? Amateurs talk tactics, experts talk logistics, right? Like the hard thing about fielding like a military force, for example, it's not, are we going to take that hill? Are we going to, win this battle? It's like, how do you feed and clothe 2 million people, right? How do you ship food to them around the world? How do you keep them, from getting sick? How do you, make sure that they have like enough warm clothes and all this stuff, right? These are like the most complicated problems.
Because those are also popular tactics of let's just wait them out until they don't have any food. So, so I mean,
they're going to freeze eventually.
Yeah, it all comes full circle for sure. I have my other question, but you mentioned one other example you wanted to mention, and then I have my follow-up question.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is in a smaller manufacturer. So some of the smaller manufacturers, they have it's kind of a subtly different set of problems, right?
Yep.
They don't make the same amount of margin that the automotive OEMs make, right? They may not have as many kind of talented people who can do process improvement, who can, do the re-engineering of all this work areas and stuff like that. And so they kind of need, I think, more, just give me the answer, right? Just help me understand like how to make this improvement. I don't need the data. Just help me understand what to do. And we took a smaller manufacturer. This was a group that was struggling quite a bit. They had a production target of 500 parts per shift. and they were in around 300 range, right? And they were stuck there, and they just could not get their productivity up. And so we went across their entire line, right? It was about 20 stations, and we were able to, and it's never one thing, right? It's not that there was just this one aha moment that solved everything for them, right? It's a million just little things, right? Like make sure that we're actually starting on time, right? Make sure that, we're training people who, don't understand the process of how to do all the steps, because that's how you're going to do it, efficiently in the time that's allocated, right? And just one thing after the other, helping them understand which stations were falling behind, what their production targets actually were, right? And not saying at the end of the shift, oh, you missed it, but 1 hour in, are we up to pace, right? Are we keeping track? Are we actually doing what we need to do? And we took them from 300 parts to over 600 parts per shift.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's, and again, no magic, right? This isn't something, we didn't reorganize their entire factory. We didn't, put a bunch of expensive machines in there. Just doing the basics, right? Doing it well, understanding and just helping them see where these issues were. Because that process these automotive guys have, that's a lot of what it is, right? It's not that they have incredibly fancy machinery. They just have learned through, almost a century in a lot of these cases, right? Of how to just do those incremental improvements, right? Show up every day, find something that's wrong, fix it, right? Make sure that you're doing it better. And so helping to drive that in these smaller manufacturers can make a massive impact, right? Like we're very happy if we can make 5-10% in an OEM, that's amazing. But to be able to double production in some of these factories, I mean, that would just change their entire cost basis, right? That changes the economics of what they're doing completely. So, I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yep. So my follow-up question, and just maybe one example, because I gotta, in terms of process improvement, I gotta imagine there's just been maybe one customer or one example you've seen. It's just such a bizarre delay or like thing that you've seen. I know you said, we're looking for the best turnaround, but is there anything you've seen that's just like, I can't believe this is happening? Like, how have they not noticed this? And you don't have to name any companies. Obviously, we don't want to throw anyone on the bus, but has there been anything you're just like blown away that they're like, wait, how have you not noticed this one? If there's not, I guess that's a good thing.
Man,
but
no, it's hard, right? I think like the challenge is some of these are they're just crazy combinations, and it's one of those things where I don't know. Again, the some of the stuff, it compromises the product. So shouldn't probably talk about that, right? I think like there's just a lot of things where I guess let me just say, if there's a way to do it wrong,
someone finds out.
We've definitely seen it.
Yes.
We've definitely seen it done that way.
And
you know what I mean? And that's I think that's kind of the bottom line. Yeah. I think it's crazy. People come up with, and honestly, sometimes these are really ingenious solutions, right? To make it easier for them, right? To make the process faster. But they'll put, grease on a part that's, then going to go get, some sort of like Loctite or something. And so now it's compromised and it won't work, right? And it's things like, in their process, it made it faster, right? And it made sense at the time, right? Or they'll skip a bunch of steps and like, well, actually, no, we definitely need those steps, Or it'll be a safety critical part and someone's like hammering on something to try and get it to like, fit together. And you're like,
those are good key insights though, because it's definitely, I'm sure it happens where it does make one person's life easier and people that far up the line don't think anything of it. And then somewhere they're like, I don't understand how this doesn't work down here. The science says it should. And you find out that operator A, it's just he's worried about his metrics and he can produce twice as much if he throws a little grease on it.
And it's like the whole, sorry. It's the whole like you're too close to the forest to see the trees situation. They're working with these people every day and they have relationships and like they're like, I don't know how to tell this person they're doing everything wrong. But when you have that data right in front of you, like this is where things are holding up. This is where things are happening. It's like that's the proof you need to have that corrective action or have that process change or whatever it is. So it's nice to have that data behind it.
Yeah, and and it definitely kind of removes some of the emotion, and I think
Right.
you wind up in a lot of cases with just it just the teams are people are pointing fingers, stuff's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey
Exactly.
guys, like you guys are both trying to do the same thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's trying to
Exactly.
make this work, and yeah, there's the team leader who's watching this person alter the process may not understand what's going to happen 12 stations later in someone else's area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have that holistic view. And I think it's really, really interesting because it is really, it does require some empathy, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
these are very complicated jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that they have such a hard problem hiring people is that it's a, this job requires you to be kind of athletic. It requires you to remember a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? It requires you to know how to like put all these things together and be able to kind of keep up your motivation to do that for 8 hours of a shift, right? That's not easy. So
Yeah.
for them, they're all
Mm-hmm.
making rational kind of
Yeah.
adjustments and trying to make things better. But they don't see exactly right that like there is this one level above where it's like, okay, well, that now changes everything that happens after you, and it's going to create all these
Mm-hmm.
Right.
chaos and all these issues. So, having some of that visibility, I think definitely helps. And I think it's interesting, honestly, because I think there's also one thing that manufacturers are good at, and they have to be good at because margins are tight and all this stuff, right? Is saying no, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
not spending money on something, trying to figure out a clever way to do it, and not be not just immediately go out and buy a part to go fix something,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's sometimes hard to understand the cost benefit ratios and at the lower levels too, right? Where I remember, we showed somebody, this is like a just a basic one that happens everywhere, right? This machine wasn't working properly, so they're just jamming this button,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're trying to get the machine to cycle, and it just isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you're a first line supervisor, you've been doing that process, what's going on. You may not have sympathy, they're not doing it right, or just suck it up and just get it to work because we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have to call somebody out here. But if you're, a VP and you're doing the calculations, you're like, wait, this is an extra 5 seconds every process. This is costing us millions of dollars.
Yep.
Like, no, let's call that, equipment
Yep.
manufacturer.
Right.
Let's get a rep out here. Let's
Mm-hmm.
fix it. Right. And then the operator's more, just happier. They're not having to deal with
Yep.
this busted equipment, and the business is operating better. And so it's, I think even at a financial level, you need that kind of
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
higher level of visibility to understand what is this ultimately costing me? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is actually really expensive having this person be frustrated like this.
Yep.
Well, we've had you on for a little bit longer than I think we talked about, so I want to make sure that I give you a chance to bring up anything or mention anything that you wanted to talk about, maybe that we didn't have a chance to before we wrap things up.
Absolutely. I think the headline for us is I think there's this entire area that just we haven't studied enough in
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing, just related to productivity and how do we understand the work being done? How do we
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're being productive, we're being safe, and that we're doing things the right way? And I think we're excited to try and explore that with the industry broadly. So I think it's going to be a really exciting journey. We do just have a video that just came out that kind of explains a little bit more about who we are and how it works. And we can kind of play that and
Yeah.
have that be our wrap here.
Yeah. For everyone listening, I just before we kind of cut to the video, I just want to obviously thank you, Eric, for joining the show. Definitely very interesting. I mean, I did a little bit of research, but I don't think the research did you justice, because I think what you had to say got me way more interested than just reading about it. And so thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. Please hold on and stay tuned. We do have a video, but first, Lauren.
Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you can tune in as we release episodes and you get notified. It's very awesome. And then we do have a YouTube channel, so feel free to pop on over there.
Yeah. So everyone that is watching, obviously, please hang out from this video from Invisible AI.
Bye.
Bye.
Every day you show up to your plant waiting to be bombarded with everything that's going wrong. Between meetings, planning for new product lines, and keeping up with administrative tasks, you have to figure out exactly what's going wrong, where, and how to fix it. The only way to do that is to walk the floor and identify the problems yourself. Until now. Invisible AI is a manufacturing vision platform that uses AI cameras to track human motion and objects on the factory floor in real time. Our AI co-pilot helps everyone on the production team identify and resolve issues quickly. We highlight operators who need support, reduce response time for maintenance and safety issues, and identify new opportunities for continuous improvement faster than ever. Invisible AI is a record of truth that shows you what is really happening in your factory, and most importantly, what to pay attention to. Empower your workforce with Invisible AI.
This podcast is brought to you by Promise Incorporated, hosted by Matthew Rawl, mixed and edited by Ben Parsons, and produced by myself, Lauren Rawl. If you have any questions or would like to be on the podcast, please reach out to podcast@promiseinc.com.